Alright, so the moment you've all been waiting for, the official breakdown of how Sean Strickland was able to become the UFC middleweight champion is now here. In my last video, which consisted of my reaction and thoughts about the fight, I said that I was going to upload a part 2 of that video, which is going to be the tactical breakdown of the fight, and thank you so much for patiently waiting because this is that video. When I recorded my last video, I had not watched the fight yet. After watching the fight, my opinion of the fight hasn't changed, but I will say that I still do believe Adesanya was too defensive during the fight. However, there was a good amount of times where he did actually take his chances to be offensive. It's just the man in front of him had an answer for everything, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to tell you everything that Strickland did right. Strickland and his coaching team deserve major props for how they performed against one of the best strikers in UFC history. They had an incredible game plan and completely nullified Izzy and his best weapons. Firstly, Strickland did an amazing job to take away Izzy's kicking range. Izzy is at his best when he can comfortably kick in the center of the octagon. However, when you take that distance away from him, it becomes less effective. Izzy was trying to throw kicks from punching range and it just didn't produce the same effect because the distance was off. Secondly, prior to the fight, I had no idea how Strickland was going to be able to close the distance and not run into shots down the middle by Izzy. That was until Strickland did something that I never thought he was going to do. I never even thought he would have an idea to do this. Strickland was advancing forward and lifting his leg up. In doing this, he can effectively check kicks in case Izzy tries to throw kicks from punching range. It also acts as a knee feint to keep Izzy guessing as Strickland is coming forward. This would freeze Izzy for just a second and Strickland would try to attack off of it. Thirdly, this is the most important aspect and probably what you guys also noticed as well, the striking defense. I'm not one to mention anything about numbers, statistics, and percentages, however, I have to for this video. Strickland managed to hold Izzy's striking percentage below 40% in all 5 rounds of this fight. That is a first. No one has ever done that to Israel Adesanya. Not Pereira, not Whitaker, or Cannonier, only Strickland. So what is this magical defense that we're talking about? When I was rewatching this fight, I was paying very close attention to what Strickland was doing defensively, and I thought this is very unusual and unorthodox. However, I couldn't really describe it. That was until I saw a tweet on Twitter from somebody in the martial arts community that I very much respect, and I want to give Face Sensei credit for this. He mentioned that Strickland masterfully mixed Thai defense along with a Philly shell, and immediately I thought, oh my god, this is it. This is exactly what it is. This is Sean Strickland's striking defense. Who would have thought about this combo? Thai defense and the Philly shell in MMA? When have we ever seen anything like that? That is amazing. It really embodies the name mixed martial arts. However, even though that's the title of Strickland's striking defense, it's not completely like that. It's not like a boxer who's been boxing with a Philly shell their whole life can just learn Muay Thai and then all of a sudden become a UFC champ. No, that's not how it works. It's Thai defense and the Philly shell, along with some unorthodox / uncommon blocking techniques in MMA that you won't see in any other striking combat sport. When fighters are unpredictable and unorthodox offensively, for an example, Yair Rodriguez, you normally point it out because it's something that people don't normally see. So because of that, it would generate success. You can't really game plan against somebody who doesn't look conventional. Strickland is exactly like that, except defensively. His stance was narrow as usual. However, he was constantly lifting both legs to check leg kicks. He was even checking body kicks with his shins as well. Again, something you rarely see in MMA. He did very well to catch any left kick to the head, body, or leg. His hands were in the Philly shell position, and every defensive movement was very subtle. When he would parry slightly straight out and tuck his chin. He would also shoulder roll punches as well. However, we also saw different blocking techniques like the high elbow guard and forearm blocking. The high elbow guard is something that I believe needs to be talked about more in MMA. It's an unusual type of guard, but can be very effective. Guys like Dustin Poirier, Yoel Romero, and now Sean Strickland use this guard. It's a defensive guard where you lift your lead elbow to block straight punches from getting through. I believe it's like a kung fu technique or something like that. I'm not too sure. But nevertheless, very different and unorthodox, yet so effective. It enables you to hide your chin from your opponent. Max Holloway admitted mid-fight against Dustin Poirier that he had weird blocking, and as a result, it makes sense why Max couldn't really find his target. Another thing I noticed was the forearm blocking techniques. This is actually a defensive traditional martial art blocking technique where you raise your forearm to block a straight punch and take it out of its trajectory. And you know what? The funny thing is, I used to train Taekwondo, and I remember drilling this technique over and over again when we would do forms. We would incorporate this block into our forms every single time, and I thought it was useless. I was standing there practicing it and I was like, this is the stupidest thing ever. This thing will never work in a fight ever. And that was until I saw this fight. This technique literally worked in the highest level of combat against an all-time great. Overall, Strickland did very well in using little movements to take Izzy's attacks off course. Nothing fancy, he wasn't slick or anything, just basic unusual blocking. A defensive style that Izzy couldn't crack. Now this isn't to say that Strickland was perfect, because he wasn't. At times he was still making the same mistake as he did against Pereira, where he would bite heavy on feints, especially to the body, but he didn't exactly need to pay for it for reasons that I'll mention later. Another thing I want to point out is the distance management by Strickland. He did very well to pull his head out in certain exchanges when Izzy would try to set him up for a bigger strike. He would either parry, block, but at the same time he would pull his head out. So in that case, he takes his head out of the equation. You will see him take a half step back out of range to avoid being hit clean. That was pretty much the story. Strickland barely got hit clean. Lastly, as great as he was defensively, this led to a lot of rounds being very tight until Strickland capitalized on something. Just like Izzy, I felt like Strickland was also being too defensive as well. Both guys didn't land anything significant. Strickland was able to counter Izzy when Izzy would commit and finish his combos with the right hand. There were so many exchanges where Izzy tried to come over the top with the right hand, and in return Strickland would counter hard with a weird looping left hook. He would take advantage of Izzy being out of position. When Izzy missed with the straight left hand, Strickland would try to counter with basic boxing combos, and it was landing. He would come over the top with looping left hooks, and they would land because Izzy can get caught being too tall at times. This is where Strickland really pulled away in my opinion, because he was getting outworked and he wasn't having much success being first. It wasn't until Strickland started being second was when he started landing the bigger shots. His knockdown on Izzy was phenomenal. He was able to score that knockdown because he got Izzy in position before attacking. Too many guys, when they fight Izzy, they get so adamant about wanting to hit Izzy clean that they don't focus on getting Izzy in position where they can land before attacking, and that's what Strickland did. Izzy was trying to land that fade back left hook on Strickland, the same left hook that he finished Whitaker and Costa with, but the difference was that he couldn't fade back because he was up against the cage. The cage was working against him, so Strickland kept it simple and came down the pipe with a 1-2. This goes to show that fundamentals are so important. A fighter with good fundamentals will always be a good fighter. Great execution, great game plan from Strickland and his corner. They really knew who they were up against. Strickland isn't even known for checking kicks like that, yet he looked like he'd been doing it for years in this fight. It looked like he had been training Muay Thai for like years. He beautifully defended Izzy's straight punches and took Izzy's kicks away from him, and the rest was history. Strickland was able to adapt to Izzy's style. Strickland wasn't fighting like that against other opponents, but against Izzy he had to fight that way. And it's honestly mind-boggling that who you fight dictates how you fight. The best fighting style out there is one that you can adapt to your opponent.